Wichita, Kansas, 1979. The Beechcraft Barron assembly line covers 11 acres of production floor. Continental IO 520 engines are staged in sequence, run up, certified, and installed. Mechanics who learned twin-engine rigging on Air Force utility transports are showing younger hands how to calibrate the synchronizer systems that hold two independent engines within 5 RPM of each other in cruise. Over 2,800 piston twins will leave American factories that year. A Barron rolls off the floor every 18 hours. A pressurized Cessna 421 runs a parallel line in Pawnee City, Nebraska. The Aztec line at Vero Beach runs 3 shifts. Every instrument-rated commercial pilot in the country understands the path forward: single engine, instrument, multi-engine, ATP. The piston twin is not the endpoint. It is the credential that separates serious aviators from the rest. The Cessna 172 is the classroom, the twin is the diploma. By 2024, Beechcraft delivered 2 Barrons, 2 for the entire year, worldwide. That is not a market correction, that is a category extinction event. I have pulled enough Lycoming cam lobes, traced enough fuel crossfeed mismanagement through NTSB reports, and read enough botched single-engine go-around accident files to understand the mechanics' truth about what these aircraft actually were. The piston twin did not fail in service. A courtroom destroyed it. Without a public vote, without a warning, and without a replacement for the one thing it produced that no single-engine turboprop has ever replicated. Here is what actually happened. The light twin-engine piston aircraft solved a problem that single-engine aircraft could not. 6 seats, 600 nautical miles of range, 200 knots of cruise, and the mechanical redundancy of a second independent power plant, all within the certified infrastructure of general aviation, flyable without a type rating by a properly trained private pilot. That combination does not exist in the certified piston world today. It has not existed since the Cessna 310 line shut in 1981. Cessna introduced the 310 in 1954 and sold it to the Air Force, to corporate flight departments, and to Saturday morning television. The 310 starred in Sky King for nearly a decade because it was the correct visual shorthand for a machine that did exactly what it claimed. Cessna built over 6,300 before shutting the line. The Beechcraft Barron arrived in 1961. It ran 64 years without a fundamental redesign. That is not inertia, that is an engineering verdict. At the top of the category sat aircraft that required something from pilots that no single-engine airplane can demand. The Beechcraft Duke produced 380 horsepower per side from turbocharged Lycoming TIO 541 engines, pressurized its cabin using bleed air at altitude, reached a service ceiling of 30,000 feet, and burned 45 gallons per hour in cruise. On a single-engine failure, it required 150 pounds of rudder force at VMC, the FAA maximum allowable for certified piston twins, to maintain directional control. Owners described its maintenance burden as king air costs in a piston airframe. Many of them bought it for the looks. They sold it when the overhaul invoices arrived. The Piper Navajo hauled freight and charter passengers across the American West from 1967 until the category collapsed. It had 8 seats, 310 horsepower Lycoming engines, and it was a platform that air taxi operators ran hard and mechanics serviced on rotating schedules between routes. The Cessna 421 Golden Eagle carried 6 passengers in a pressurized cabin above the weather, powered by twin-geared Continental TSIO 520 engines. The maintenance manual described those engines as mechanically complex. Their geared reduction drives were expensive to overhaul and unforgiving of deferred maintenance. The Piper Aztec was produced from 1960 to 1981. It earned a reputation for honest utility. It went places, it came back, it carried 6, and it did not demand anything from the careful mechanic that a careful mechanic could not supply. At their peak, these aircraft were aspirational in the most literal sense. Step-up advertising in aviation magazines in the early 1970s showed a Cessna 421 parked on a corporate ramp next to a King Air. The implied promise was that the gap between them was shorter than the price difference suggested. Corporate flight departments that could not yet justify a turboprop ran pressurized piston twins and employed full-time airframe and power plant mechanics to keep them airworthy. The category supported an entire maintenance infrastructure, shops specializing in continental geared engines, avionics houses building custom twin installations, and prop shops calibrating matched blade sets for synchronizer systems. The demand behind these aircraft was not purely economic. The pilots who drove the twin-engine boom from the mid-1960s through the 1970s were largely the men who had learned asymmetric power management in B-17s, C-47s, and B-29s. They returned from Korea and Vietnam expecting multi-engine capability as the baseline of serious aviation. The twin was not an aspirational purchase for them. It was the continuation of what they already knew how to fly. That generation built the market, sustained it through the first fuel crisis, and kept the Wichita assembly lines running through economic headwinds that should have closed them. These aircraft required something specific from every pilot who flew them, regardless of background. Flying a piston twin single engine is not the same activity as flying a single with a handicap. When the critical engine fails at rotation speed, the aircraft yaws toward the dead side with physics and 300 horsepower of asymmetric thrust working simultaneously against pilot inputs. The dead propeller, still turning in the airstream, creates drag equivalent to a deployed speed brake that cannot be retracted. Below minimum control speed, VMC, the rudder no longer has authority over the yaw moment. The aircraft goes where the dead engine points it. Most light piston twins at maximum gross weight cannot sustain level flight on one engine. Their single-engine service ceilings sit between 5,000 and 10,000 feet. In the Mountain West, that is not a safety margin, that is the terrain elevation. An engine failure on climb-out does not provide an escape route upward. It provides time to manage the descent toward the least bad option within reach below. The twin-engine era produced the most competent instrument pilots in American general aviation because the platform enforced preparation by enforcing consequences. Asymmetric thrust recovery, VMC avoidance, fuel crossfeed management under duress, and single-engine instrument approaches in actual instrument meteorological conditions were not theoretical exercises. A pilot who could not perform them reliably did not survive the twin-engine transition without damage. The aircraft taught the lesson before the examiner had to. In July 1965, Richard Collins, editor of Air Facts magazine and holder of 20,000 logged hours, published a short article titled Double Trouble. He had reviewed NTSB accident records going back a decade. What those records showed did not match the marketing materials. Collins found that the serious fatal accident rate in piston twins ran measurably above the rate in single-engine aircraft. Engine failures in twins were more likely to produce a fatal outcome than the same failure in a single. The reason is aerodynamic physics. When one engine fails on a light twin at maximum gross weight, below single-engine service ceiling, the aircraft descends. The surviving engine runs at full power. The dead engine creates drag. The options are all on the ground below because the aircraft is not going higher. Collins published this in 1965. The flight instructor community pushed back. The insurance industry continued pricing twin-engine aircraft as premium safety platforms carrying premium premiums. The FAA issued no formal response. The debate has no official resolution to this day. The boom ran anyway. The veteran pilot generation's demand overwhelmed the statistical argument for another 15 years. 2,800 twins were delivered in 1979. There were 3 shifts in Wichita. The multi-engine rating was the only rational step for a serious pilot building toward an ATP certificate, and the twin was the only realistic platform for corporate transportation at the price point the market could reach. Then the litigation arrived. Through the 1970s, courts expanded strict product liability doctrine into a framework that reached directly into aircraft manufacturing. A manufacturer could be held responsible for an accident in an aircraft designed and built decades earlier, regardless of whether the design contributed to the outcome. In 2001, a jury awarded $480 million against Cessna for injuries sustained in a 1989 crash involving a 1972 vintage aircraft. The plaintiff did not need to prove the aircraft was defective. Strict liability shifted that burden. Manufacturer liability insurance per aircraft built cost approximately $50 per plane in 1962. By 1988, the cost was $100,000 per aircraft. That was a 2,000-fold increase over 26 years. Industry-wide premiums ran $24 million in 1978. By 1985, the figure reached $210 million, ninefold in 7 years. Insurance underwriters worldwide began refusing to write product liability policies for American general aviation manufacturers entirely. From 1983 to 1986. Beechcraft alone defended 203 lawsuits at an average defense cost of $530,000 each before any settlement. The NTSB reviewed the underlying accidents. It found manufacturing or design defects in none of them. The crashes traced to pilot error and third-party maintenance failures. The legal system required payment regardless. The manufacturing economics collapsed in sequence. Fewer aircraft built meant the fixed liability cost concentrated into fewer units, raising per-aircraft prices. Higher prices killed demand. Lower demand meant fewer aircraft built. In 1978, American factories delivered approximately 18,000 general aviation aircraft. By 1994, the industry total was 928, a 95% collapse over 16 years. Industry analysts estimated that between 28,000 and 100,000 jobs disappeared from aviation manufacturing during this period. By 1987, the three largest general aviation manufacturers reported annual product liability costs ranging from $70,000 to $100,000 per airplane built and shipped. Beechcraft discontinued every piston model except the Bonanza and Baron, clearing the entire line from the Duke to the two-seat Skipper trainer. Cessna stopped selling single-engine piston aircraft in 1986. Piper went in and out of bankruptcy. Manufacturers pulled the Cessna 152, the Piper Tomahawk, and the Beechcraft Skipper from production by the mid-1980s, and none ever returned. The institutional infrastructure that trained instrument-rated commercial multi-engine pilots was dismantling from the bottom up while the twin-engine category collapsed from the top. In May 1986, Cessna halted all piston production. 6 consecutive years of losses. The chairman promised to resume if Congress passed liability reform. President Clinton signed the General Aviation Revitalization Act on August 17, 1994. Establishing an 18-year statute of repose. Production tripled within 5 years. Singles came back. The Baron survived. Not one twin production line that had closed before the General Aviation Revitalization Act ever reopened. The last new certified piston twin design in the United States entered production in the early 1980s. The Cessna 303 Crusader. Cessna built 297 before the line shut permanently. Over 40 years have passed. No American manufacturer has certified a new conventional piston twin since. Not because no one wanted to, because no one ran the numbers and liked what they saw at the end. In November 2025, pilots on an aviation forum noticed the Baron G58 and Bonanza G36 pages had disappeared from the Textron Aviation website. No announcement preceded the removal. When Textron confirmed the decision several days later, the statement cited a strategic shift toward the Beechcraft Denali, a single-engine turboprop designed to compete with the PC-12 and TBM-960. In all of 2024, Textron delivered 5 Bonanzas and 2 Barons. 7 aircraft from the lines that once ran 11-acre assembly floors. The Baron's 64-year run ended because the market for new Barons had effectively reached zero. The machines that replace the category do not require a multi-engine rating. The Cirrus Vision jet is a certified single-engine jet, flyable without asymmetric thrust training. The PC-12 delivers 200 knots at altitude with 1 engine and 1 throttle lever. The TBM 960 climbs at 1800 feet per minute above flight level 250 on a single PT-6, and the PT-6's failure mode is gentle enough that the pilot has time to declare an emergency, descend, and find a runway. The training requirement the piston twin enforced is not recoverable from these platforms. The multi-engine rating still exists on FAA certificates. Pilots still earn it, primarily in Piper Seminoles, on the way to an airline seniority number. What the Seminole does not provide, what only an owned twin flown for real transportation in actual IMC on a regular basis ever provided, is the sustained emergency management discipline that the Barron era built into its pilots over decades of genuine use. Currency is not proficiency. A check ride is not a philosophy. The platform enforced preparation because the platform enforced consequence. Remove it, and the preparation becomes theoretical. 13,000 Bonanzas and Barons still fly. Textron has pledged parts and engineering support for that fleet. The logbooks keep running. The type clubs hold annual gatherings. The aircraft will not disappear from general aviation in this decade. The question Richard Collins raised in July 1965 was never officially closed. Was the second engine worth what it cost to insure, to build, to train for, and to defend in court? Did the insurance industry's pricing mechanism destroy a category that physics and better training culture could have made genuinely safer over time? Did the market make the correct call, or did it eliminate the machinery that produced the most disciplined instrument pilots in American general aviation history? Those questions are genuinely open. The data does not close the loop cleanly, and anyone who tells you it does has not read the same NTSB files Collins reviewed in 1964 and 1965 with the same intellectual honesty he brought to them. What is not open is the practical outcome. The era ended without a public fight, without a government inquiry, without a formal reckoning for what the collateral damage of the liability collapse cost the pilot training ecosystem. The pilots who understood these aircraft best were not in congressional hearings making the case. They were in hangars, running logbooks, keeping the machinery serviceable on margins that no manufacturer would price a new product into. The multi-engine rating is still on FAA certificates. Pilots still earn it, primarily in Piper Seminoles, on the way to an airline seniority number. What the Seminole does not build, what only an owned twin flown for real transportation in actual instrument meteorological conditions over years of genuine use ever built, is the sustained emergency management philosophy the Barron era produced in its pilots. The difference between currency and proficiency is the difference between having held the checklist and having needed it in the dark. The twin-engine era built pilots who had needed it. That generation is aging out. There is no platform coming behind them to build the next one. They are still out there. Are you still flying a piston twin, or did you make the switch to the turbine single? Tell me which side you landed on below.